Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another Goosebumps TV show episode review. In today's episode, we're pulling from Season 2 or Season 3, depends on which source you go through. I think it's supposed to be Season 2. And the episode we're looking at, I think, is the first short story adaptation in the TV show, if I'm not mistaken. If it is Season 2, then it is the first. And that episode is Don't Wake Mummy. Yes, I know I have a sealed DVD here. Found it at Walmart a while back. Since Netflix still has the show, some of these unopened ones I have not opened yet. And on the back we have Don't Wake Mummy. So I'll be using this for a reference point here. Off the bat, this episode, for what it is, okay, I think really captures my inner child. I've said that about a couple of things in Goosebumps in the past, but this, for what it is, for it taking place in one day, the whole story, for it just being short and sweet, right to the point, it has that short story vibe to it. It's very creepy, very atmospheric. There's a lot of zaniness and horror going on in here. A lot of camp that Goosebumps is known for intermixed in this. And it just comes off to me as a hidden gem in the show. A true hidden gem. It's not the best episode. I'm going to put that out there. This is not the best episode. But this has a lot of fun to be had with. And I think part of that comes to my nostalgia from watching movies like Phantom of the Megaplex or Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire growing up. And those movies homage in great ways these old black and white horror movies from Universal, like the Universal Monsters movies. Like Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire has this Dracula homage in the beginning. Or just overall vampires, if you want to look at it that way. And then, of course, you have Phantom of the Megaplex, which is obviously homaging Phantom of the Opera. And to me, what Goosebumps is about is really what this story is about, this episode, Don't Wake Mummy. It has that same level of appreciation I have for those movies I mentioned, and it really pays homage to those black and white old horror films that are just genuine classics. And I just really get a kick out of this episode. This episode is written by Rick Drew. You might know him from, I think, one of his more famous episodes he's done, or I guess infamous, is Don't Go to Sleep in the show. A lot of people know about that episode and how how people find that episode to be kind of bad. But he's also known for doing episodes from like Haunting Hour as well. And he did like Uncle Howie. That's one off the top of my head. So Rick Drew occasionally does some R.L. Stine properties. And in this episode, I think what really helped it was William Fruitt, my favorite Goosebumps director in the show, directing this. And through the combined effort of the screenwriting from Rick Drew and the directing from William Fruitt, really made something small scale, special, with some heart, captured the camp and the humor perfectly. And yeah, this really reminded me of being a kid. So I really love this episode. Sorry, I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. Kind of want to save some of this stuff for the end of the review. But yeah, off the bat, if you have not watched this episode, I would try it out. It goes by quick, and it's a fun one. So let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So the main character is named Jeff, and the opening starts off with Jeff in his room, kind of giving an inner monologue about. It's like the past tense when he's saying to the audience that his sister Kim got put in her place one day, and he's kind of talking about this story about Kim. And it cuts to him getting pranked with this spider, and his sister and her friend. His sister's name is Kim, and he gets jump scared, pranked by this spider dangling in front of him on this stick. And the girls are laughing, and he screams, and it catches the attention of Jeff's mom, who is alone with them this one fateful day, and she basically scolds Kim, like, the father's out of town, you should not be doing this, and Kim's like, all right, whatever. And then there's a knock at the door. They go downstairs and answer the knock, and there's a delivery. The delivery comes all the way from Egypt, and it's revealed that Jeff and Kim's father is an Egyptologist who studies, like, ancient Egyptian artifacts, and their mother is also acquainted with that as well. They seem like professional Egyptologists, you know. And this sarcophagus got mailed to the house, presumably by accident, but the mail carrier won't let them, send it back or anything, so they have to keep it and store it somewhere. So they put it down in the basement. And when they put this sarcophagus down in the basement, the mom is in kind of a hurry because she has to go off to, I guess, work. And Jeff, being the little brother, he gets kind of pranked by this fake mummy hand by Kim, and this kind of sets the mom off. Says, no funny business, stay away from this sarcophagus. I know you kids are going to be tempted to prank each other. Just stay away from this. So Kim agrees, and of course her friend, and then I forget his name, Jeff. It cuts to a scene where they're eating pizza in the kitchen, and the mom's heading off to go do something, I guess, for her work. And Kim and her friend are assigned to watch Jeff for the night. And of course, Kim is messing with Jeff, and Jeff walks off. And Kim takes the last slice of pizza, and they put on this old black and white mummy movie. Now, this reminds me of being a kid, being around Jeff's age, watching these black and white horror movies. And what was on there was like an original thing they shot. That was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. It felt like those old black and white monster movies. And that scene kind of reminded me of the opening to Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire. That's why I brought that movie up. And Kim and her friend are just laughing at Jeff being scared of this movie. And it actually spends about a minute or two like showing the movie off a little bit. And it was really fun and atmospheric. And then Jeff, after the girls were laughing at him, he's getting kind of scared and getting to the really scary part. He turns off the movie and says, why do we have to continue to watch? We've seen this 1,000 times. And Kim's like, oh yeah, why do we have to watch a movie about mummies when we have a mummy down at the basement? And Jeff's like, we should not go mess with the mummy in the basement. But Kim's like, whatever, are you chicken? He's like, no. So he's trying to like show off, I guess, because her friend's there. So the three go down to the basement where the sarcophagus is without knowing anything else about it. Earlier, there was a flash of this jar, this Coptic jar, where, if you're familiar with like Egyptian history, when they performed, what is it called? I'm trying to think of the word. When they did mummification, they pulled out the organs and they put them in these jars, and they put the jars with on the side where the sarcophagus is, because the organs need to stay intact too. It was a pretty ritualistic thing for pharaohs, especially when they were buried, because the pharaohs are also supposed to live on in the afterlife to provide for the Egyptians. That was at least the belief. So they kept everything intact in these jars, but there's a scene where this jar has a owl. I think it's an owl body or a falcon body or a hawk. And the head turns around, and it's kind of hinting at that something's magical about this. So when they're down there, the two girls try to pry off the sarcophagus lid, and Jeff's like, you shouldn't be doing that, And then you see this seal, sealed by the priest of the dead, who would bury these, who would make these sarcophagus and seal the sarcophagus. There's these seals on the side of these tombs, essentially, on these coffins. And the two girls break it, essentially. And when they lift the lid off, they see this mummy, and he's buried with this cat. And this really creeps out Jeff. And he's like, we shouldn't be doing this. This is really wrong. And you look at the mummy, and the mummy looks really creepy. So creepy. Even though it's the same mummy outfit that was used in Return of the Mummy, it still works very well here. And there's also a mummified cat at the end as well. And this creeps out Jeff. And he hears a door shut, and he runs when he notices that his sister and her friend are gone. And he runs up to the top of the stairs to try to open the door, and he hears this noise, and he comes back down, and there's this frightening scene. And I kid you not, this is one of the scariest things I think I've seen in Goosebumps. The mummy just rises up and looks over, and Jeff's just like panting and freaking out, and he runs to the door, the back door, because there's another door he can leave at, and he's trying to get it open, but he's just awestruck by this mummy coming to life, and the mummy turns to him, and it's like breathing smoke, and the music is so tense. It's just so well done there, and he screams and runs out of the door, and it then cuts to Kim and her friend laughing, and the friend's like, why do you do this? And she's like, well, he's easy to scare. So the two of them then go down to the basement to see where Jeff is, and they notice that he left the door open. And they look down at the sarcophagus, and the way he was laying before, he was laying completely different. And Kim's like, it probably was just, Jeff just moving around some stuff. So then they get this idea to prank Jeff later on. Of course, Jeff has run up to his room and hidden under the covers, and it cuts to him getting greeted by his mom, and he's pleading to his mom that the mummy's alive, and the mom's like, don't listen to everything your sister says. It'll be all right. None of this is real. Mummies don't come to life. They're dead. So it then cuts to the mom is in the basement looking at the symbols on the sarcophagus. And early on, she mentioned that early on in the day, she mentioned that it was too early to call Egypt because at that time it would have been, nighttime and the dad would have been sleeping. But now since it's night, she can call because it's daytime in Egypt. So she calls, and the dad kind of reveals to her that he wants her to decipher something on it. That's why he sent the sarcophagus to the house, and he has a reveal for her, but it cuts out before we can find what the reveal is. And of course, Kim has come up with her plan to dress up like a mummy and go scare Jeff while all this is going on. And she does so, and it kind of like jump scares Jeff out of sleep. And Jeff gets really angry and pins her to the ground. And then the mom comes upstairs to tell them to stop. But once they turn around, after, all the giggles and stuff coincide and, go away, the real mummy comes up the stairs. And this involves the mom, too. This is one of the very few times in the show where you see the parents involved with the scares here. But the mom screams, and Jeff thinks it's a prank, and he walks up to the mummy, and the mummy's the mummy he saw earlier, and he freaks out, and the mummy tries to grab him, and him and his family and Kim's friend are panicking, and he gets out of the grasp of the mummy, and they try to bolt downstairs. And while walking downstairs, the mummy grabs Kim's hand and breaks his hand. It's really gross. And when he reaches down the stairs, when they finally reach to the bottom of the stairs, he pops it back into place. And then the mom finally reveals what the father told. And I don't really want to spoil it, because this is like the climax and getting really close to the ending here. But there's something along the lines of something that was also shipped to the house could be used to destroy the mummy. And if you let the mummy get a hold of this, the mummy could essentially come back to life for real, turn back into a real human. And that's as far as I'll go with that. So there comes this urge to take this item and destroy it. And there's this big climax, very, very tense climax, where essentially Jeff is wrestling with this mummy to try to destroy this object. And there's this garbage disposal scene that's really great. And it's very tense. And then, of course, the climax happens. And there's a pretty, I want to say graphic, but pretty surprisingly cool way they ended the episode, at least the climax at least. And everything seems kind of resolved. And then it cuts to the next morning. And Kim and Jeff are eating breakfast. And the mom is complaining about this cat being outside. And let your mind fill in the rest. There's a big twist ending involved. And it's really funny. I don't want to go any further with that. But it's just one of my favorite endings in the whole show. And that's essentially the episode, Don't Wake Mummy. Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way near the end not to spoil it, so sorry if I was kind of stumbling there. But, yeah, that in a sense is what you're going to get out of the episode. Now, positives off the bat, what I really like about this episode is that it tries to tell the story all in one day. Sometimes the show, and sometimes Goosebumps does that, but in this episode, it doesn't convolute itself with a longer or grander location setting or time period. It just all takes place in one day inside of a house. It doesn't overstep its boundaries. It doesn't create openings or anything to change setting location. It keeps it all in one day. It's a very concise story. It keeps it all in one location, and it helps build the tension. And I really dig that. And I get some people that I have made some comments in the past about other episodes, like Lots of Luck over in Haunting Hour, about how small scale it felt and how I didn't like that. But episodes like that, they had setups for like dances and stuff, and there's no reason why they couldn't try to capitalize on that, and why introduce that in the first place. But here, none of that's really introduced. It's all well within its means. There's even a great attempt to make Egypt. There's a cutscene with the dad. There's a great attempt to kind of show Egypt in this. The practical effects were great. The mummy looked fantastic, even though it was the same mummy as Return of the Mummy. I really have no complaints. Props get reused in the show a lot. So it still looks great. The mummy cat was awesome. I don't want to spoil anything about that, but that was awesome. It just makes me smile every time I think about that. One of my favorite things in the whole show. I loved how Rick Drew was able to change some things about the short story. Like in the short story, it's a little bit different how they go about the whole mummy thing in Kim specifically. But in this episode, I like how tense it was. I like that the changes Rick Drew made were still frightening in their own ways, at least to me. And yeah, I really didn't have any complaints about this. One thing to note, at least major complaints, but one thing to note is that A.J. Cook, who played in Final Destination 2 as the lead character, is in this episode. So this is like one of those other Hollywood actresses in one of their early roles. And that was kind of a treat to watch. And, you know, the acting performances weren't terrible. Not some of the worst I've seen, but they were pretty okay, decent, and some really good performances. I like that this had like a historical context, because I'm a big history nerd, and this really speaks to me. This whole episode feels like an homage to those black and white mummy movies. It feels like a love letter to those things. It doesn't overstay its welcome. That 20 to 22 minute time range is perfect for something like this. It's just a fun little romp, very small scale, takes place in one day type of story. And that's kind of refreshing to watch in the show, because most of the time they're trying to just jam pack as much as they can in the episode. Here it's just very simple, and it takes that to every degree with it. It has like little to no budget in it, but there's a lot of that Goosebumps cheese and that heart put into this, and I can feel it. So that really didn't bother me. But I do have a negative with it, and what prevents me from giving this a 5 out of 5 is that even though I can be forgiving about this episode for a lot of things, because it is a short story adaptation, and it does feel more short story-ish than most short story adaptations in the show, but I do have a negative, and it's not even the actor who plays Jeff. It's not anything he does particularly. He's not the greatest actor. He's more passable. I don't really view him as a negative, but it's more just Jeff. For a protagonist, I kind of like a little more to do with their character. I don't like one-trick ponies. I don't like one trait of personality. And Jeff is kind of like that, unfortunately. Now, it's not the biggest negative ever. It's not the biggest negative ever for me. There's a lot of heart in this, kind of reminiscent to how I view the Haunted House game with Benjamin Plenner like being like the one negative. Here, it's just, my only negative is Jeff. I wish we got a little more of Jeff's personality. Now, I totally can understand if somebody finds Jeff annoying. I totally understand that. It's not a problem for me, because I was able to plug myself into that one trait Jeff kind of showed, and that he's like just scared. And that's how I was with like horrific things when I was a kid, like horror movies and stuff. But I kind of wish we saw more layers to Jeff, and I just think all the other 5 out of 5s just had more things to offer than this. So I couldn't give it a 5 out of 5. Now, where I settled with this, I decided to only deduct 0.3 off for Jeff, because that's really my only drawback with it. It's just, for how simple it is, and for what it is, this is really great. Seriously, this is really great. And I highly recommend trying this one out. And now, some people might not think it's as great as I do, and I'm totally welcome to that. If you want to say in the comments that you don't like this as much, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, this one really captures my inner child. And I love this. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Don't Wake Mummy. A 4.7 out of 5. That's about a middle A for me. Really great episode. Let me know down in the comment section if you have watched this episode. Do you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.